Yeah, and then I can add Gong as well because Gong's decided it wants to attend. No, John is here. Hey, Jono.
Hi guys. Hey. On brand today.
I should have. Yeah, I should have gone with mine. Well, not that I have one, but.
I've just seen connect to work on the
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know what's.
Georgie and
Yeah.
pushing that in.
This call may be recorded for note-taking and coaching purposes.
Hey.
Hey, Georgie.
Hi, how is everybody?
Good, good. Can you hear me as well? Just checking.
Yeah, perfectly.
Excellent.
Beautifully. Hi, Josephine.
Josephine's having some audio problems. Hopefully it resolves
Yes.
in the next.
Did you see us?
She can see us,
Yeah, okay.
but can't hear us or talk to us.
So shall I let them in? It's 12.
Yeah, you got 4 people now as well.
Okay.
We're going to start letting the attendees in. Oh, they're flooding in.
Well, that's quite appropriate given what's going on outside.
What's happening outside?
It's just pouring with rain. And I have to go for a run after this. I'm hoping it's going to.
It's all right here. It's all right in London.
Oh.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's just very soggy and Surrey.
Surrey's been soggy for a little while, hasn't it?
It has. It's actually quite hazardous. Even the tarmac is soggy.
Doesn't sound very nice.
Oh, man.
It's not.
Brilliant. Going to give everyone another minute or two to join, and then we'll kick off. We're just discussing the weather, being prototypical.
Yeah.
I know.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
I see you again.
No, I'm so ashamed and embarrassed that I constantly do talk about the weather, but I just can't help myself. It's mortifying.
It's just a very British thing to do, isn't it?
I know, but I mean, honestly, does it show a complete lack of imagination when it comes to small talk?
Well, I think if you live somewhere where it's really consistent and nice, then it would be far easier to not talk about it. But because you wake up and anything could happen that day.
Increasingly so.
Yeah. Could be 40 degrees, could be 2 degrees. Who knows?
Yes.
Hello, everyone.
Ah, your audio.
Yeah, it was just taking its merry time, wasn't it? So I left and rejoined, and it seems to have helped.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to kick off because people will keep joining, so we'll just welcome them in as they keep joining. But I'm going to kick off for now. So thank you, everyone, for taking your lunchtime to attend our roundtable. Really looking forward to this, and hopefully we're going to have some great discussions today. So I'm going to do a brief introduction, talk about the format a little bit, and then we're going to dive straight in. So in terms of who I am, I'm Tom, head of product for Mintago. So everything to do with like kind of what we offer and the software is what I get into, and I really enjoy the space. It's fascinating industry to be learning about and working in. In terms of the format today for the roundtable, this is for everyone to get involved. If we imagine we're sitting around a big round table, that's what would be happening. We've got 3 experts joining us today, which we're really lucky to have. So we've got Josephine Bakker, who will do an introduction in a second. We've got Georgie Mack, if you wave as well. Yes. And then we've got Nick Porter as well, who I can't see at the moment, but we'll move past that. So please do get involved. If you have questions, ask them. This is intended to be something everyone participates in. It's not just the speakers. And I'm here purely to guide the conversation through the questions that we've set out. In a few days, we'll follow up with notes. So you don't feel free, like you need to take notes throughout. We'll follow up with notes. And this call is recorded, but it's only recorded for internal purposes. It'll never be shared outside of the organization. And also the notes as well will be anonymized. We won't say a certain person said a certain thing. So trying to create a nice high trust environment for this discussion. Just two quick points on meeting hygiene before we get going. The first one is, if possible and your internet connection will allow it, people being camera on is really helpful because it means you build a bit more kind of rapport with people and you can see what people are looking and reactions. So if people can turn them on, we really appreciate it. And then the second thing is that if people could please just quickly test the raise hand feature in Zoom. So it's just down at the bottom and it's a hand that looks like this. Just quickly test that works for you. Because that's, in terms of like passing between people, you know, maybe you have a question or maybe you want to pop in. It's really useful if people use that feature because then actually I can direct the conversation towards you. Whereas if people are just trying to interject and also then the camera's off, it can be quite hard to get involved in the conversation. So I really appreciate that as well. So perfect. We're going to do some brief introductions and then we're going to dive straight in. I will pass to Josephine. Please, could you tell us who you are, what you do, and one big decision you're in the process of making at the moment with regard to your job?
Ooh, so hi, I'm Josephine Baker. So I'm the Learning and Experience Manager at Benenden Hospital. You might have heard of Benenden Health, which is an insurance provider. So we work quite closely with them, but we're essentially the hospital services that we deliver. We're not A&E. So that's me. In terms of a decision I'm making at the moment, I think for me, my foundations lie in metrics and my passion lies in experience. So, and I think probably quite a lot of you can understand it's really hard to use metrics to be able to demonstrate effective initiatives that drive experience. So at the moment, I'm looking at my strategy using employee metrics to understand how we can demonstrate that our initiatives are having impact. So that's one of the kind of broad decisions I'm looking at. So that's me. Thanks, Tom.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then I'll pass to Georgie, please.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, all good.
Perfect. Okay. So just a brief introduction. So I know this has been talked or touted as surprising paths to engagement. And I have to say, I never really thought I'd end up in the metric space. But here I am, and it's something that I really feel is essential if we're going to make work better. And essentially, that's what really drives me. I kind of do what I do because I think that there's a lot of scope for improvement in the workplace. So I head up a company called Peopleful, and we're built up around some diagnostics that were created by academics in South Africa, not by me. And they measure really the impact that the workplace has on the well-being and performance of people that work there. And essentially what they do is they help organizations understand their greatest people risks, what are the root causes of those risks, and what's the cost of inaction. And we set up around the pandemic, which is obviously such a great time to set up an organization. And really there was, I mean, we're all aware there was so much work going on around well-being and lots of tools being put into the workplace to empower individuals to better look after their own mental health and well-being, but kind of slightly sidestepping the role of the organization. And for me, that's the huge opportunity, because if you can understand what the organization is doing to the health and well-being and performance and productivity and everything else you can think of, then you've actually got the agency to do something about it. So that's Peopleful in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. Can I please pass to Tatseng? Sorry, I'm going to butcher some names today. So Tatseng, I think.
Yep. Cool. Sorry, I've been experiencing some Wi-Fi issues. Hi everyone, I'm Tatseng. I'm one of 3 co-founders of Ride Tandem. We specialize in smart shared shuttles to help especially blue collars get to work in areas poorly served by public transport. Also actually a very small sort of angel investor in Mintago from sort of last year as well. So pleased to be on the sort of journey, as well as a user of the platform. We currently have a team headcount of about 40 people or so. So I think we're very much getting to the point where we are starting to think a lot more about the professionalization of the HR sort of function, KPIs, etc. So yeah, this webinar felt quite timely as a result.
Fantastic, thank you. And then can I please pass to Morgana?
Hello, sorry, my connection's pretty bad in the office. So hello, my name's Morgana. So I'm Head of Employee Experience and Culture at Essential. And we're going through a massive change at the moment. So we're separating 3 ways, setting 2 parts of our business. So my kind of main aim is how do we navigate some of the changes and kind of increase engagement with our people? Because it is quite difficult when you're separating, when you can't communicate certain things at certain points. So we're finding that a real challenge at the moment is, you know, how to keep people engaged with that element of transparency, which still supports some of our investors' kind of processes as well. So yeah, so interested to sort of hear you know, other people's perspectives on their journey as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And then can I please pass to Manvir?
Hi, hello everyone. So yeah, my name's Manvir. I work as the global head of HR for the Build Data Group. We're a software provider for the construction industry. Headcount of just about 100 employees, mainly across the UK and Ireland. I guess that one of the biggest things for me now going forward is we've recently just delisted off the NASDAQ and we've gone private. And one of the key things for the business now is obviously making profits as we're working towards a 3-year exit strategy. And unfortunately, one of the key decisions that has been made just in the recent weeks is that there will be no bonuses going forward, not for the next within the next 12 months anyway. And that decision will obviously be communicated to the staff in January. So the key challenge for me, I guess, going forward is, well, how is this going to impact retention? How do we keep people engaged? So yeah, so this is going to be, I suppose, an interesting conversation for me, really, going forward.
Fantastic, thank you. And then can I please pass to, I think it's pronounced Shemishaw. I think that person on the call. Or Shemek, maybe. I'm not 100% sure on the pronunciation. Not sure. Okay, I'll move past that. And then can I please pass to Sylvia? Sylvia? Should be able to hear us. I think everyone can hear us, right? If just get some vague nods, that'd be amazing. Okay, then can I please pass to Mira?
Take myself off mute. Hi everyone, I'm Mira. I'm the head of people at Flashpack. We curate exciting travel, solo group travel for people in their 30s and 40s. I'm standalone, so lots of spinning plates and juggling. I think one of my biggest challenges at the moment is we're pivoting to the US, so looking at how to keep our teams engaged and aligned across our remote destinations, including the US, and we're across multiple time zones.
Perfect, thank you. And then can I go to Sam? Sam Bedford? Okay, I'm going to skip Sam, and I think that's then Liam, sorry, I think is the last one to go.
Hi everyone, sorry my camera's not working. It's not a great laptop I've got at the moment. Yeah, I'm Liam. I work at a traffic management organisation called Hook Highways. They're the people that keep you stuck in traffic all the time. But we're looking at our employee engagement because we have quite a high turnover rate in terms of our operatives. So that's a real big piece of work that we're looking at the moment. Quite a few decisions around that at the moment as well.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And then Sam, I've seen you've just put your camera back on, so could I please ask you to do an introduction quickly?
Yes, of course. Sorry, my internet connection is also a bit dodgy today, so I expect to be in and out of the call and for there to be some dropouts, and my apologies for that. I'm Sam Bedford. I'm the head of HR for a company called Oxford Biotherapeutics. We're a biotech trying to solve cancer. So based in Oxford, as the name would suggest. I worked for the business for about a year. We have really good levels of engagement, I think, but it's always been an area of interest and passion for me. No obvious perceived needs or issues for me at the moment, just wanting to stay ahead of what experience other people have and making sure that we stay on top of hints and tips and ideas about how to maintain good levels of engagement and metrics and things like that.
Perfect, thank you. And then finally, can I please ask for an introduction from Alicia?
Hello. Yes, I'm Alicia. I'm the head of People, Wellbeing and Equity at Mental Health First Aid England. Some of our key challenges are around, we're a social enterprise. We don't have huge budgets. The pandemic and everything else has had an impact on our finances. So we can't compete on salary. So we have to think about how to keep people engaged using other means. So we do offer very, very flexible working, things like that, but also just trying to be creative and thinking about what else might keep people engaged in the more holistic sense as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. That's all the introductions I think we're going to do now. So I'm going to go straight into the first topic then. Does your HR department have all the information it needs and resources to make well-informed decisions? So I think we've talked about quite a few different decisions, like what information to share when, how to deal with turnover, how to increase engagement, lots of decisions being made. So could I please throw to Josephine first for that one, please?
Yeah, of course. It's actually a great one for me because I've been at the hospital for 2 years. And when I joined, they didn't really have any metrics to demonstrate the impact of what they were trying to achieve from an experience and an OD perspective. So over the past 2 years, I've put in a lot of different metrics that I'm happy to talk about that are helping us to shape and see where our initiatives are having an impact. So just an example, your kind of key HR metrics that you're using to measure that often relate to how people are feeling in an organization. So things like, absence, your absence percentage, and also looking at the type of absence that's being listed as well. So there are other employee metrics that I've introduced to be able to sort of quantify the qualitative feedback you get. So people sharing how they feel and the general consensus and the culture of an organization. So has everyone heard of Net Promoter Score? So there's the employee Net Promoter Score, and that's something that we introduced quite transparently to the organization. So my role was relatively new for the hospital, and they knew they needed to shift and focus on experience. So part of that program was about visibility and clarity of what I do. So that came alongside launching the Net Promoter Score for employees, specifically to say, we don't know if our initiatives are supporting you in the right way. So we need your feedback, and we're going to use this as a quantitative metric to understand in each grouping, each department, how people feel within the organisation and whether they'd shout about it. Is anyone unfamiliar with the Net Promoter Score? Do you want me to explain the logic behind it, or everyone quite clear? Basically, you get asked as an employee whether you'd rate the hospital. So it's all about word of mouth, but actually you'll find that's the most impactful from an experience perspective. It's that circle of influence. If you go into a group that's really negative and has negative views, no matter how positive you start, you're likely to absorb some of that energy, and your circle of influence shrinks. But yeah, so we're on a bit of a journey, and I'm able to start to demonstrate the change, the step change. So in 8 months, we've moved from a needs improvement score to a good employee engagement score. And we've also introduced a EX platform. We actually work with Blink because we're frontline. I don't know if you've heard of Blink, but they're fantastic. The growth and focus on new developments as well is ever changing. But we're basically about 60% of our organisation is frontline. So it's really hard. I know somebody mentioned about connection and how to keep people engaged. I think it was to do with the pay element, the bonuses. businesses, you'll find connection and connecting in the right way. If you get the right platform that matches that, you're going to drive engagement. So from launching Blink, we've seen an increase from our survey response rate. So our annual survey's gone from 46% to 61%, which has not been achieved in a long time. And the really nice thing about that was that the feedback was really positive. Normally, if you get engaged and you bring in more response rates, you have a really, you often unsurface a lot of issues, but it just showed that for us, the engagement factor was the connection and the barriers for them to be able to feedback. So Blink is basically a mobile frontline app that we've introduced. But it also has like a dashboard of what they call frontline intelligence. So you can actually start to understand by team how people are engaging with different topics. It's fantastic, and I would recommend it for any frontline organisations as well. And I'm not selling it, by the way. I don't get anything for shouting about it, but it just has really had a phenomenal impact on experience across the hospital. I'm going to stop talking now and open up to any questions or anyone else that wants to share on this topic.
I mean, I'm really, from my perspective, thank you so much. From my perspective, I'm really interested to see what Liam thinks, because he's dealing with non-desk-based workers, frontline staff, like not the same, but sort of similar, and that engagement thing. So Liam, I'm not sure if you want to hop in.
So just from my experience with all of that, with the cost of living being quite high as it is, as we all know, it's created quite a transient workforce for us at the moment, where we're really struggling to maintain staff for a number of reasons, not just one. One being competitors, two being the fact that they can move because they are renting, they're not they don't have mortgages. There's a number of factors, various reasons as to why we can't retain our operatives. So we really try to focus on our employment package, increasing benefits, but we really need to sort of drive that home and sort of really enable them to sort of understand their sort of benefits. And we're making quite a few, there's quite a few projects around that at the moment, to sort of really drive that home for everyone, to sort of try and improve our retention.
We've had the same, Liam. We actually looked at our benefits data to understand usage, and it's really low, considering we offer so many benefits. So we're working on opportunities to be able to, drive better engagement with benefits as a retention mechanism, because people just don't, again, it's that barrier. So using this frontline app, Blink, is enabling us to get more information and more word of mouth and more promotion about what benefits we offer as a retention mechanism, really. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say it's so true. I think, I mean, loads of organizations have some really, really good benefits in place, and they're kind of communicated in a one-off way. And I think there's this thing about how do you consistently keep those benefits front of mind, because they're fantastic. And I think one of the other challenges can be people self-identifying with some of those benefits. So how can we find ways of kind of connecting people better with the benefits that are available? But no, it's a huge shame, because there's so many great things out there.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to interject there and kind of add kind of agreement with the conversation. So I've worked for a series of SME businesses over the last few years, and I think there's a real hole in the market for flex benefits being available to smaller SME organisations, and for HR people in terms of the way they think about the employee population. So I used to work for a marketing company, and we have some absolutely amazing data on our population that we're trying to talk to and target, and we don't use it. And I think marketeers would kill for some of the insight that we should have about the population we're trying to communicate with. But in my experience, we're still trying to do what I would call broadcast news, not segmented communications. And the other thing that I think about is the fact that organisations work really hard to have a really amazing set of benefits, and then we don't really work out whether they're really interested and valuable, which is why I think the flex benefit thing would be hugely important if it was a possible option, particularly with some of those insurance-y type benefits. I don't know how we get around it. I've never found a solution that works. If anybody's got one, please let me know. But you know, if you could have a pick and mix way of working on flex benefits, where people could, to Georgie's point, identify for themselves, where you're not pushing it out there, they're pulling it towards themselves. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah. And actually, Sam, that just makes me, I mean, something that I was going to say anyway, that I think one of the main things in terms of gaps in information that I hear in conversation with our clients is there's lots of piecemeal things that are happening. So, you know, quite often, and particularly in larger organizations, there'll be a kind of culture survey going over here, some kind of well-being stuff happening here, but it's quite rare to have a really good set of foundational data against which you can then do exactly what you're saying, which is segmenting and thinking about benefits for different parts of the organization, or where needs are greatest, and understanding what those needs are. So getting that foundational data and then kind of building a strategy up from that, a bit like a kind of MRI scan, I guess, I think can be really, really powerful in maximizing the kind of investments that have been made.
Yeah, I'll shut up in a minute. I'll say one more thing. If I had my way, I was starting from scratch, from a brand spanking new HR department. The first thing I do is get somebody to sort out your HR analytics, because businesses run on information, usually financial information, but they're, you know, most organizations I've worked with are very numeric, and HR people tend to be based on words, and they're less interested in our words and more interested in our numbers. And we need to continue to bridge that gap between those things, so that we talk the language of business. But yeah, if I had the first appointment after mine, obviously, that would be a data analytics person, or somebody who was really looking after my HR data from a foundational point of view, to add to your point. I'll shut up now.
No, thank you. It's all really insightful. I'm interested to hear from Morgana as well, because it seemed like things are changing really fast there. So maybe Morgana, but also if anybody else has experience with this like rapidly shifting organizational structure, things changing a lot for employees quite quickly, and like how you can stay on top of that shift and know what people are feeling and like help them through processes like that.
Yeah, I think sorry, my camera is really bad when I'm in the office, so apologies. Yeah, I think one of the main things I think is fundamentally important is communication, and communication in a variety of different ways, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the kind of benefits discussion you've just been talking about, which is understanding the different profiles of your workforce and how do you adapt that to the audience. So whether it's benefits or it comes from the business, how do we ensure that we're messaging in the right way? Now, in the past, in previous companies, we've brought in marketeers that have done some of this analysis in terms of, you know, how do we get the best out of communicating and getting the right messages to our people? And I think it's just really thinking about, thinking about the different audiences and knowing that, you know, some of the work that we're doing in a kind of like a HR perspective may not be important to the person that's receiving it in some way. And it's thinking about, okay, what is the relevance to that person? How does it affect that individual? And what are the key things, messages or benefits we're trying to promote that is a benefit for that person? And, you know, I think for me, that's been a little bit tricky, because we've been trying to juggle so many different things whilst trying to sell, set up a new strategy for the new business, then looking at, you know, unfortunately with the split, you lose the economies of scale when negotiating new benefits, packages to platforms such as our learning management system, all of these things. And it becomes quite a bit of a beast of trying to kind of navigate that through. And I think the most important thing is, you know, even if you have no updates, it's always important to communicate, you know, to your employees to say, you know, we're still working on this. We haven't got any updates to kind of provide to you, but as soon as we do, we will do. I think a lot of companies make a mistake of, I'm not going to say anything because we haven't got anything to do. And what we found is when we haven't communicated, it goes externally, and then the rumour mill then kind of disrupts the whole workforce. And we end up having a spike in attrition because of that, because people don't feel like they're being brought on that journey. They don't feel an active part of the decision making and having that visibility and transparency. So I think communication is really fundamental to what we do in you know, whether it's benefits, communication or change. I think it's communication all the way.
I just want to second that. Sorry, I
And
just
third.
yeah, I mean, it is absolutely massive, and it's kind of like, I don't know, an engagement survey that doesn't kind of cough up communication as being an issue, but it's amazing how I mean, there's so much nuance to communication, as you've just pointed out, Morgana, and I think, you know, getting that right. I mean, it's I think if your communication is poor, then it has just massive ramifications in terms of employee engagement, you know, attrition risk, etc. And I think it is thinking about it in all of those different ways. It's not just like, I mean, there was a very large FMCG organization we worked with before I was in Peopleful, and you know, comms came out really badly in the engagement survey, and the CEO was like, well, it's clearly because my voice is just not being heard in the far reaching in the corners of the organization, and that's what we need to change. And we were like, oh my goodness, it's so much bigger than that. And it's the flow of information. It's exactly as you said, it's how decisions are made and how people are getting involved or feeling like they're at least vaguely involved in that decision-making process. You know, it's reporting structures. I think internal comms actually is just such an important role. And it's always seen as the sort of like poor cousin to external comms and marketing, but actually increasingly, I think it's absolutely critical, especially in the context of retention.
Yeah, I think also that, I mean, there's extra lenses that go into that one as well, like the fact that people are more remote now. Yeah. I remember doing 300-person all-hand meetings at a previous job where, you know, every single person would be in a room and the CEO could talk and every single person would hear them, whereas now things are different and those gaps widen. Josephine, I'm going to hand back to you for 2 seconds, and then we're going to move on to the next.
Yeah, I was just going to say a huge part of comms is your leadership strategy as well, and your leadership training. I think there was a survey from Gallup that said they're responsible for 70% of the difference between employee experience in teams, and they have a massive impact. So if you've got an aligned leadership team that are living by the same values and demonstrating and communicating in the same way, that experience is going to be much more level across the hospital, across the organisation, and it's something that we've invested in, and we're starting to see improvements of communication disapparating down across the business and avoiding those rumour mongering, as you've mentioned earlier, Sam.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I'll leave one final little thing for people to think about, which is how to overcome the selection bias of this sort of work. Like if you're surveying people, the people that don't respond might be the least engaged, and how to like deal with those sorts of challenges. But we don't have time for that one today, so maybe that's a future topic. I'd like to move on to topic 2, which is all about how you gather information and knowledge about your employees. What insights does this provide you? How do you use that information? So I'm going to start this one with Georgie and ask for just a quick kind of run through of how you think about this at Peopleful, Georgie, and then we'll hand over to the floor.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, this is such a great question, and I particularly like the how part of it, because how you get information back from employees. I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of cynicism out there. So one of the things at Peopleful, we gather our insight via assessments. And I think if we were just going out there with assessments, it would be really, really challenging statistically to get the right uptake. So there's something about creating a sense of reciprocity. So for example, anyone who comes and completes one of our assessments actually gets a workplace wellbeing report back. And on that, it signposts them to different benefits that might be relevant given their particular profile, etc. Going back to that, making people aware of the benefits that are available to them. So I think there's something about how you gather it, creating that sense of reciprocity is really important. And I think it's been touched on a couple of times in the conversation already, but how you play that information back to people, because again, I think there's some of the cynicism comes from the fact that it's kind of doctored information that goes back. But we work quite closely with our clients to create as much transparency as possible around the results, and that does take, I think, quite a lot of courage. But what we've seen is that it goes such a long way. That transparency transparency travels really, really far. So that's one quick thing on the how. And the other thing I was going to say is this thing of like information and insight. So I think that there's a lot of data that sits within organizations, but a lot of it is just that, it's information. And I think actually it creates this slightly false sense of, that you know what's going on, that you've got a sense of how your people actually are. But often I think it's very, very difficult to action any of that. So for me, and this is one of the things that we live and breathe, which is we're all about trying to provide really, really high quality insight. And that comes down to really getting behind the drivers that sit behind terms like burnout and like communication. And there's a great Desmond Tutu quote, which I am going to say very quickly, which is this idea of there's a point where we need to stop pulling people out of the river and we need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in the first place. And I think that's such an important thing. So in terms of the insight and really trying to get behind the root causes of what's going on in the workplace, because it's only then that you can actually take action that's going to create meaningful change. So sorry, there's 2 penneth worth from me.
I'd love to hand to Manvir now, if that's okay, because I think this plays quite closely into what you're dealing with at the moment. It's like there's no bonus stuff going on. It might breed that might actually breed cynicism in and of itself, and how you think like this sort of stuff might help you managing quite a tricky time, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, look, in terms of data, I mean, we are actually, the word data, the acronym is actually forms our values, and funnily enough, transparency is one of our core values as such. We try and gather as much data as we can, and because we're quite a small company. I mean, there's just under 100 headcount. Our senior leadership team work very closely with the senior managers within the business. So when we gather data and information is coming through, whether that's through our HRIS, whether that's feeding through directly through comms, through managers, through one-to-ones, through team briefings, any feedback that we get, we actually action it. One of the things that we do, which works great for us, is we have an employee forum, which we hold once a quarter, and we have a representative from across all of the functions of the business. We meet together, and one of the sort of our C-suite attends that meeting and is the host. And actually, it's great to have a senior leader in the business that's there to listen to that feedback directly. We do it off-site. People feel that they can talk about the issues that they're experiencing in a safe and open space. And actually, that works really well. And we go through every single issue that's been raised and we address it. We respond, and we make sure that the notes are all visible and they're communicated to the business. And then if anybody has any questions, they're free to come and talk to their manager, to HR, and actually even to the senior sort of manager that was hosting it. So that actually really works well for us, and we get a lot of action points come out of those meetings that we're then able to address. So that works really well. But going on to the point about what we're going to do going forward, I mean, this is going to open up a whole host of new challenges because nobody likes to hear bad news. Everybody goes to work to earn money at the end of the day, and the sort of the financial incentives is quite a big thing, especially in the current economic climate. So that I suppose is going to be the big challenge. But I guess what I've already started thinking about is, okay, there's going to be no bonuses, but what else can we do to help our people? How else can we keep them engaged? Whether that's through training and development, whether that is maybe reviewing our benefits packages. Do we need to chop and change it slightly? Can we do anything a little bit more different? Let's have another look at our work, at the demographics of our workforce. So yeah, they're just all kind of things I'm just taking into consideration at the moment.
Thank you. Unless anyone's got something to add, I'd love to throw to Tatsung actually, because I think you mentioned in your introduction you've got quite a strong analytics setup at the moment, and how you think about kind of gathering and using information in this space.
Yeah, and I definitely sort of agree with what sort of Sam said sort of earlier, that I think historically, sort of HR or people is viewed as a sort of more qualitative, more wordsy sort of set of things. But I think partly maybe because I come from more of a financial sort of background, and I guess I'm currently the sort of de facto sort of head of people, I think I've naturally brought a bit more of a quantitative sort of approach to it. You know, I think as Josephine sort of mentioned earlier, like for us, employee net promoter score is the core sort of metric that we sort of track and measure in action. We every quarter send out a survey of 10 questions, one of which is the, would you recommend Tandem as a place to work? And we also keep the other 9 questions exactly the same on a sort of 1 to 10 sort of scale. And so that way we can compare across sort of quarters. And then, although I think it was a bit scary when we first started it, we published the sort of results and present them in front of the whole team at each of our quarterly sort of team days. We also then sort of show, okay, in the last quarter, what were the key things that people highlighted as improvements, and here's what we did against them. Because I think what we realized is that as you sort of grow in velocity and sort of scale of the organization, when you're a team of 10, to some extent, everyone knows what everyone else is sort of working on. But in a team of 20 or 40, especially when it's remote first, it's really hard to just keep track of what's happening in the wider sort of organization. So I definitely think the move to sort of documentation of that as well. We've also found that actually, in addition to the quarter engagement surveys, we now send surveys on quite a few other things as well. I think, again, it's just a sort of that as you scale, you just can't assume that you definitely know what's going on in the organization. So every year we sort of, our employee benefits survey, we ask people to sort of quantify which ones they would sort of prioritize if we're introducing new packages. We recently did a sort of taster week where people could join other teams sort of working sessions to learn more, and we sent a survey again, what do you think? And I think a lot of it, we try to as much as possible ask people to quantify sort of preferences, because otherwise the sort of qualitative, oh, it was great. And, it's a bit harder to actually sort of then measure month on month or quarter on quarter sort of improvements.
Fantastic, thank you. Also interested to hear from Mira on this as well. Like with you're now going to be more distributed and more spread out across the world. Like, how does this all play together for you in terms of actually understanding how people are feeling?
Yeah, it's quite tricky, isn't it? Because having sort of fully remote teams, dispersed teams, and as we're growing, you feel less and less detached from people. When you're small, you can have much more connection. So we are very much getting involved in utilizing the engagement surveys. I'm not quite at the point at analyzing the data, so I'm really interested in saying when you said you send that sort of list of 10 questions, what kind of questions are you asking, rather than the 50 questions that sometimes get recommended. And also I'm really interested to understand how you're measuring performance. How do you use data to measure the performance of your teams? Is there anything I can learn there from you?
Yeah. I'll pick up sort of the questions from our forum and sort of post it in this chat before we sort of wrap up. I think in terms of performance, to be honest, I think this is something that we're only just now really starting to sort of implement sort of properly. I think, again, we used to rely on sort of informal reviews, one-to-ones, but we now sort of do a biannual sort of review cycle where, in addition to upwards and downwards feedback, we actually also ask people to nominate peers as well. And it's the exact same sort of consistent set of questions as well, because I think what we've realized is that although I think our managers generally are pretty great, that with performance reviews, there can always be, to some extent, quite a high degree of subjectivity if people are left alone to their own sort of devices. And what we realized was actually we need to be giving people a sort of standardized sort of set of questions there as well. I think we're still iterating on those, so I'm not as confident yet sharing those, but I will dig up now the sort of questions that we use in our sort of quarterly engagement surveys as well, and pop it in the chat here.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there a little bit as well, because I have a bit of experience here in terms of performance management and how you assess these things. I think that the 2 key things that really drove massive improvements in what I've seen is having really solid examples in performance management. So you can't have like, how is this person doing? It's like, here's what good looks like, here's what not so good looks like, stuff like this. So like having that ability to actually like, and if everyone can access that same repository of like extremely solid examples. And the second piece was assessing against what's important as well. So splitting out feedback, not just saying like, how's X doing? It's like, how is X performing against our cultural standards? How's X performing against these like prescriptive performance standards, like output or whatever it is that they do in their job, and actually splitting that feedback, because you can end up with different causes for underperformance in different areas, because you might get an amazingly talented person who's a cultural misfit, and then that could throw off a whole department. And you might get someone who's culturally amazing, who will always get good performance management reviews because, you know, everyone's friends with them, but actually their actual like solid output performance is actually lower than other people. So splitting these things and saying like, all of these things matter, and here's how we assess each one individually. I've seen big improvements there. I'll throw to Josephine.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've had a bit of a learning journey over the last 2 years on pinpointing what is the right question to ask for particular topics. And I think really having a standard generic feedback form doesn't give you what you need, and the feedback questions should be steered solely around those outcomes, and it's easier said than done when you've got initiatives that you're hoping to address something more culturally, and they don't have that finite dum this is what you're going to get, you're going to walk away with this knowledge, but it's about understanding what the outcomes are and what you want to learn. So I've just had one of our strategic strategies is to engage the workforce with sustainability. So we want to be more of a sustainable employer. And I've actually asked the same question in 3 different ways, because I know people are going to interpret it differently, and people are going to say what they think they should respond. So using slightly different phrases to get a more honest review. So you'll notice in like emotional intelligence reports, they often ask the same form of question, just slightly different, because different people's interpretation of wording is completely they'll come at a completely different angle. So your intent on what the question should be and how it should be responded to could be completely different. So that's been a real journey for me, and it's helped to form my survey metrics for employee feedback, and kind of those key taglines that we need to track year on year, so that we can see whether we're having an impact with the initiatives we brought in to address that statistic. But I just thought I'd add that because I'm still learning now, and I think it's alongside the quantitative data, it's having those open conversations as well, and that transparency to say, how did you interpret it? What does that mean to you? And I'm running workshops at the moment specifically around a stress statistic, because people have completely interpreted it in 2 different ways. So there's potentially 2 different routes to go down to support initiatives that we can then help the organisation with. And it's just about asking that question and getting that definitive or quantifiable answer or interpretation, because each person is unique. I just thought I'd add that in.
Thank you. That's great. I'm going to wrap up that topic now, because we're running through the time quite quickly, and then go on to our third and final topic for the day, which is what are people finding drives employee experience, engagement, and retention at your organizations? So it'd be great to hear a little bit from everybody about like what drive or what they think drives great experience, engagement, and retention, specifically at your organization or previous organizations. I'm going to go to Sam first, if that's okay, Sam, because you mentioned in your introduction that you had some really strong engagement. So I'm interested to see what your thoughts are here.
Yeah. So a couple of things, one a bit more hypothetical, one a bit more practical. So interestingly, I do things like stay interviews with people on their anniversary of appointments. And I specifically ask for a lot of feedback during people's induction and onboarding period. And I think the mere fact that I ask and then do something about it helps with engagement. So it's not rocket science, it's just really practical. And I think the fact that you're interested and you do follow up on anything that needs reinforcing or changing, I think is also hugely vital. So that's the kind of practical side of things. I think theoretically, we have a bunch of managers, and it's really interesting because I'm not sure that they are the best skilled managers in the world. I have worked with some really great managers, and I look at the guys I'm currently working with, and like us all, we all have development needs, but they have some too. But I think they are genuinely very in touch with their teams. And there's a statistic that I saw many, many, many years ago, which said that the reason that people leave is 80% about their managers. So people go, oh, it's because they're not earning enough. It's because they're not doing this. It's because they're not doing that. It's not. It's about belonging and participation, and usually something about the relationship with the boss, whoever the boss is. And I thought 80% was pretty high. And then I saw that data again refreshed about 5-6 years ago, and it's actually gone up to 85%. So there are some really interesting challenges if you have a very remote workforce. You have a workforce that is pretty independent of the organization in a psychological sense. But I think working on the relationship and the skills and abilities of the manager is hugely important and very relevant.
Yeah, that relationship with the organization, relationship with manager is just, critical.
For most people, the organization is embodied by their manager, in my experience, unless you've got a really cohesive and very strong senior leadership team who kind of circumvent that. And then people go, actually, my manager's rubbish, but I really love the organization. That so rarely happens in my experience.
Agree. I'll throw to Mira. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I totally agree with you, Sam, and we're doing we've got really high engagement. You know, our recruitment process is really robust, so we employ people that are truly engaged from the beginning, and we do lots of work in terms of onboarding and talking and connecting to make sure we build that engagement and keep it high. But I literally just had a training session yesterday with our managers around how important they were in order to drive that engagement and keep that engagement. And I was just interested if anyone had any thoughts of how to build consistency across that management layer. So I'm finding we've got fantastic managers, but they all work slightly differently. And obviously people have their own tailored approaches to managing staff, but how do we make sure that, for example, the managers are performance managing or managing performance across their teams consistently?
Fantastic, thank you. I'll go to Morgana because she just raised her hand.
Yeah, so I'm actually doing a piece of work on this, which is building out management fundamentals, starting off with key sort of a manager's commitment, which talks about each of these different areas. You know, how do they show up to work? What are those elements in terms of knowing yourself, knowing your team, knowing how to manage a team? And I've basically created some statements. And then from that statement, how do we provide support from a HR function? So I've got training programs. We're kind of doing blended learning, a mix of online versus classroom based to kind of really bring that in. And then eventually we've also got the next part, which is the HR support. So really trying to support our managers to be empowered, because I find a lot of the times managers find delving into some of the depths of the HR topics is really difficult because they aren't trained to be managers. They're given the title, but we don't give them the training. So one of the things that I'm really keen to do is to give them that kind of, I suppose, that foundation in terms of this is what we expect from our managers as a whole. These are the behaviours, and they're real statements that kind of reinforce what we want from our managers going forward. And then here's the support that we're going to give you from a HR perspective. So here's the training, and if you need some additional support on a particular case that you're coming up with, where it's performance related or, you know, any other HR concerns, you've got a HR representative to then reach out to, and this is the support that they would give you. So we've started to do that, and we're launching that next year as part of our sort of new organisation once we've separated. So that's kind of one of the ways that we're doing that now.
Thank you so much. That was really insightful. I'll pass to Kylie because you raised your hand. So welcome to the roundtable, Kylie. I know you had some trouble joining, so thank you for joining. And
my sincere apologies for being late. So I'm head of HR and people for a telecoms company, and in full transparency, one of the reasons I'm late is we've had a real curveball this week, financial sales pipeline related, and there's been some emergency meetings, and I was late coming out of one of those. But I think it was Sam that mentioned something, and actually mine was my reason for raising my hand was actually for some guidance and thoughts on something that Sam mentioned that struck a chord with me and my company. We're completely and utterly remote, and we're spread across the country. And that relationship with managers, our teams work really well. The management relationship is great, and I'm extraordinarily proud of the leadership that I've got with our managers. My point of concern, and that is definitely a real focus for me for 2024, is the relationship with the companies. With the company, employee to company relationship. I hold coaching sessions with all of my with the entire company periodically, and it's a real pain point. And there are many initiatives that I've trying to start, and I'm going to be really transparent. Some of those haven't got over the line, and they're more from a finance budget point of view, why things have been put on hold that I would really like to implement. And I just wondered if anyone else had come across that challenge over their working life. And if they have, what are some of the things they've done to try to build that employee organization relationship, when the manager relationships are great individually, but as a remote company, there's some real TLC and work to do with the employee organization relationship. Thank you.
I'm going to pass to Josephine because you raised your hand, and then after that I'll go to Tatsung.
Kylie, I had a similar situation, but it was about how to create creativity. So when I worked for a small charity, we had to move our national training program, which supported teachers in schools, and it was around how to engage with parents to better children's opportunities, basically their education, and we had to convert a national program that was face-to-face to remote, and some of the things, I think ultimately when you've got a remote organization, it's about connection, and it's that lack of connection and the human elements, and one of the so we are being a hospital, it's really hard to be profitable. It's a very expensive operation to run, and we actually had a bit of a challenge last year because I launched a leadership program, but we had to do some of it remote, and our frontline staff aren't used to that. So one thing that I could suggest is, if you're running workshops to try and build that connection up with employees, you could look at how to make that more real. So I had a leadership provider delivering it as he's standing in a room, and he's got a flip chart. So and that just had such a massive impact on people engaging with virtual interactions, because it is just, you're sat at a desk, you're in your kitchen, or it's about how to create that environment where you feel like you're in a room and you're with people. And I think that had a massive impact, because the feedback from the virtual sessions, which people were really, they had a level of anxiety around it, they actually went really well, and they engaged in the right way, and it didn't impact the overall program where we had that face-to-face connection. So I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna have to start wrapping up soon because I'm sure everyone wants to eat their lunch. So I'm gonna go to Tatsung, and then really quickly to Georgie, and then we'll wrap up from there.
Hey, Kai. I don't know to what extent you do have sort of in-person sort of engagement opportunities for the team at present, but for us, we're sort of about 60% of the team is sort of fully remote, and it used to be actually that when we first started, it was fully sort of hybrid, but as we decided to sort of scale and hire more sort of remote folks, we made the decision to sort of allocate a budget sort of every year for actual in-person sort of events. So we have the sort of quarterly team day events where we encourage people to, as much as possible sort of attend. And we've started to experiment with sort of regional gatherings. So if people sort of say live in the Midlands or in the north, east of England, for example, we'll sort of give people a sort of budget which they can use to essentially sort of work from a co-working space together that day, sort of grab lunch or dinner together, sort of etc. Because I think that whilst a lot of work can be done remote first, I still am a believer that there is something really magical about some cadence of in-person sort of engagement. And I think actually although sometimes it's a bit sort of pricey, actually, I think the return on investment of in-person engagement is one of the best things I think we do as a company.
Thank you so much for that. And then I'll finally pass to Georgie.
Yeah, I was just going to say just a couple of small things. So one of the clients we work with has had really big challenges in this area too, Kylie. And so what they've done, and again, I'm not saying this, I mean, this comes with a cost, but they've thought quite hard and they've created some kind of like hubs in certain places around the country. So that is the opportunity where there might be a few employees who aren't massively far from each other, that there's the opportunity for them to kind of gather, which I think could be something to consider. The other thing, which sounds really ridiculous, and you've probably done this, but I mean, have you actually spoken with people? I mean, I think people are quite aware that remoteness brings a set of challenges, etc. But have you had conversations with people about how would what would they do to feel more in touch with the organization? What would that look and feel like? Because I so often think that actually just asking people who are most impacted by some of these things, people are incredibly creative and resourceful, and see what they actually come up with. I know that sounds really blinding glimpse of bleeding obvious, but I sometimes think we miss things like that out.
It's the assumption, isn't it, Georgie?
Yeah.
If you assume it's an answer without asking, you're never going to know if that's actually going to have impact. But
anyway.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, thanks everyone for their interaction today. So I'd just like to summarize quickly, and then I've got a couple of asks of the audience as well before we log off. So yeah, I think the three key things that stood out to me, I mean, there's lots of amazing stuff mentioned, but the three key things that stood out is like building a metrics base seems critical, but it takes some time to build that. There are tools that are available there. I think we've had a few tools mentioned on this call today. So I think that the technology is there. It's just a case of getting it. And of course, budget and time are always challenges within HR. I think the second thing that really stood out to me was that transparency of what feedback is given and how it's dealt with seems to be really, really important in terms of driving that engagement, being really, really kind of overly transparent on like, hey, you asked 20 questions. Here are the 20 questions. Here's what we're going to do about the top 5 and the remaining 15. We don't have time right now. Sorry. And keeping that communication up. And then finally, the point around management is critical, and then training is vital for that function. That middle management layer, make or break an organization. So really driving quality there is a key differentiator in terms of pretty much everything within an organization. So I'm going to ask two things before I hand over to Jono. So the first one is that the purpose of these events is twofold. The first one is that we actually have these discussions together as a group of professionals. But the second thing also is to build a community. So I encourage everyone to please go to LinkedIn if you feel comfortable and put your LinkedIn into the group chat in Zoom, and then that way we can all connect with each other after this event. And if everyone just does that, then there should be a nice list of people to add at the end of this call. And whilst people are doing that, Jono, I will hand over to you.
Tom, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Jonathan. Hopefully from the T-shirt, you can see that I work for Mintago. I'm a strategic client director, generally working with and helping our enterprise level clients build out and flesh out their financial wellbeing offering, including some of the latest and most innovative salary sacrifice benefits. I just wanted to say really that thank you for your time. I know that a lot of you guys are time pressured, so thank you for taking and investing the time in today's session, but also thank you for your interaction. This is our second virtual roundtable, and I really am astonished by how open and transparent everyone's being. So thank you for being that way and sharing your knowledge, your challenges with each other. Echo Tom's call to action to build a community. The first virtual roundtable that we did, we've got a really nice community running. Questions are posed by people, and it's a nice support network outside of your internal organization. So yeah, absolutely share on LinkedIn. And really just hope that you found this session of value. So build a community. It's great to talk to others in your profession, cross-section of business sizes, industries, verticals, sharing best practice. I think it's something that we'll continue to do. So I hope you have found value in that. Listening to your comments today. I think that there's a theme that's coming through really that certainly I know that Manville is struggling with, with no bonus on the table, and finances are tight and budgets are tight. So how do you reward, engage, retain and acquire staff in this current climate, this economic crisis, the cost of living crisis that we're in? It's a real challenge. Fear not, however, because there are some white knights of the industry in financial well-being, and Mintago are certainly one of them. The business that Chu has built really does have a core mission to make your employees' lives happier and financially healthier via our platform and our suite of tools. Not here to pitch you too hard on it really, but if you're looking to enhance and beef up your financial well-being offering, which includes pension hunting, retirement planning, fully fledged all-you-can-eat access to IFAs, video masterclasses, financial knowledge and journeys, access to benefits, advice and eligibility checkers, centralising your employee wellbeing platform, and all of the latest salary sacrifice benefits, and the new kid on the block being grocery salary sacrifice. So if you're struggling to reward your staff, you haven't got a bonus, well, not only can you give them all of the financial wellbeing support they'll ever need, you can also give them 6 weeks free grocery shopping a year. So on an average spend of £125 a week, that's like giving every one of your staff an £1,100 a year pay rise. So if any of that is of interest to you or can help you in your challenge that you're facing, then you have an open invitation to book a one-to-one demo organised by my able assistant, Alex, who's our enterprise SDR. She will contact you and more than gladly book half an hour in the diary over the next few weeks to talk about that. That's enough from me. Thank you for having me and inviting me along. I found it a really beneficial session. So I hope you have a great rest of the day, guys. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, so we'll wrap up there. Thanks everyone for sharing your LinkedIns. I'll be sure to add everyone as well. And yeah, look forward to speaking soon. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.